All right, Chaz, let's get right to it. In the last 5 to 10 years, the big four pro sports in North America have all struggled. In some ways, they've struggled with the concept of an all-star game. How do you play the game, present the game? How do you tweak the format, all in an effort to drive up the entertainment value, celebrate the players, celebrate the fans in a way that makes sense to the players and the fans? Baseball has made some changes, but they've made fewer changes than football, basketball, hockey. So you were in Atlanta for several days. Just a quick thought. What worked? What didn't work? And what were some of your favorite things about baseball's all-star festivities in 2025?
It's funny, but it was my first All-Star game. My biggest impression being there was, well, they're all the good players. And it's still cool just to see there they are. Something I'm very conscious about doing is sometimes when I'm watching the Reds, I'll call them close the laptop moments, just kind of take it in, get a feel. And this was the ultimate close the laptop moment. And then it came down to the home run showdown, swing off, and that lived up to the hype. It was special.
Yeah.
The All-Star game has its flaws that we'll talk about another day. But there was also, great stories, great things to cover with the Reds that I was really excited to be a part of.
My favorite, good to have the uniforms back. Good to have your team uniform back for the All-Star game. I thought that was a big part of the success. It was good TV, though. Good game, good finish. It was good TV. Baseball did a lot of things right for All-Star weekend. Welcome into Power Stacks, proud members of the Growler Podcast Network. Coming up on this very special show, the one question we've struggled with all season, Chaz. Any ideas how many shows we've done so far? This is not the one question we've struggled with, but any idea how many shows we've done so far?
I'm going to say 20.
I believe it's 31. We're having so
Wow.
much fun, you've lost track. So you start a new show, you want to make sure you get the basics right first. Chemistry, content, format, all those things, they get better with reps. And so we got some reps, and we got that part of it done, but we always circled back to the question that we struggled with, and it was, who should be the very first guest on Power Stacks? Who might enhance the content, the chemistry, and who would be unique? And Chaz, I think it's fair to say that question probably kept you up nights.
That's how much I can't. No, certainly. And this was your idea. I'd like to give you credit for this. You came to me one day and said, Charlie, I know who it's got to be.
All right. It's got to be Bengals head coach Zac Taylor. That might catch some folks off guard, but Bengals head coach Zac Taylor has been in the bullpen waiting for this opportunity. It's unique. He's a great interview, and we are breaking new ground on Power Stacks. So let's get going with our first guest, Bengals head coach Zac Taylor. All right, Zac, there are different kinds of pressure. There's pressure that comes with coaching in the NFL, and then there's pressure that comes with being the first ever guest on the Power Stacks podcast. As you enter this space and look around the room and you see Charlie Goldsmith and Paul Dehner Jr., I'm just want to get a check to start with you before we get going, just to check on what you're feeling right now in terms of pressure.
As much as you can feel, it's, I did not know that this was I was the first guest. So very honored. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
I got to see Charlie a couple weeks ago at one of the Reds games. So feel like I've gotten a chance to touch base with you guys a little bit over the course of the summer.
Yeah. So that's part of our story here. So when the pitch was made to you, hey, Zac, can you do this Reds podcast with us? First off, what was your reaction? And then I'm assuming at some point that knowing that Charlie was involved probably put you over the top and maybe sealed the deal. Is that a fair assumption?
There's no doubt. I mean, when you get your hair cut by the same barber, there's a connection that's irreplaceable, and his dad is one of the early birds at Salzano's barbershop. When I go in there sometimes early in the morning, one of the other people that I encounter would be Charlie's dad. So good people over there. So that's a connection you can't break.
And it's funny because my dad has always been the early guy, but then now Zac has him beat as the early before the early guy, which I give Zac a lot of credit for.
Do they open up early for you? How early do they open a door that is not open for anybody else?
Guido will do whatever it takes. He's the Bengal man. He'll do whatever it takes to win.
He
And
is a Bengal.
I shoot him a last minute text, and all he's got is something early in the morning. He'll open up. So I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad you guys can bond over the haircut thing and the hair thing, because that's completely insensitive to Paul and myself, and kind of gets us out of the conversation early. So we'll move on from the hair thing. But Charlie, do you remember? Zach just mentioned seeing Charlie at Great American Ballpark. Chaz, you remember this conversation, and you remember when you came back to the press box what I said?
I remember first, Zach, you were really excited about Andrew Abbott, which great take, because Andrew Abbott's now an all-star. So he was just then starting his kind of second takeoff. And then Brian, I was talking to Brian, and Brian's like, Zach, is he a baseball guy at all? And I said, Zach's asked, you've asked me about the Reds several times over the years. So Brian and I were talking about that. Brian had the idea to ask to have you on. And here we are again. You got off to a good start with being excited about Andrew Abbott.
Yeah. Well, you asked how I felt about being on this podcast. I'm intimidated because there are some baseball questions you could throw at me that I will look like an idiot. So I don't know which direction this is going to head. I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be up when I talk baseball. So a little intimidated.
Paul, why don't you get us going here?
Yeah, I want to ask you this. When you attend a Reds game, do you attend it as a fan? Do you turn into fan who the same type of person that sits in, section 119 at a Bengals game? Or do you watch it do you watch other sports like a coach? Do you see this analytical, motivational side? How are you as a fan? Are you yelling like fire everyone? Like the people no? How do you attend? No. How do you attend a game?
More so as a fan than anything, because I don't really know enough. Baseball is not a sport I probably stopped playing in 5th grade when it got technical, and you start learning more about the sport. So I can see basketball that way, maybe closer to football, but baseball, no. But I am fascinated by it. I got a chance last year. David Bell let me come in before a game and sit in the meetings before a game, and so go through something. And it was so overwhelming what they're talking about. From an X's and O's standpoint, things I never even considered, because I don't even know how to put my brain there. I don't even know what they would even talk about, because I was struggling to keep up with what they were even talking about. And so it was just fascinating to see that other side of it. He did the same thing. He came over here and sat in one of our pregame meetings 2 years ago before one of our football games. And so I just don't know enough to even involve myself in that. So I like watching as a fan. I learned my lesson. One time I bought tickets in the stands, like in the actual, and that's a no-go. I just felt, but it is what it is. You kind of get in public sometimes and one person asks for an autograph and then it's steamrolls from there. So when I get appropriate seats, I usually make my way over there.
The one thing I wanted to say, piggybacking off that real quick, is that, you mentioned, sitting in their stuff and learning a little bit of just seeing their process. I remember you talking about watching Brad Stevens' press conferences at one point, or other coaches from other sports. How much do you pick up on from other sports, things that you can use? Do you pick that stuff up from sitting in a meeting with, even just seeing David Bell and their team process, or the way some people do something, even you're watching in a game, a warm-ups, or some way that they're doing something before it? How much of that from other coaches, other players, other sports do you see and pull in? Or is it too hard to try to associate?
No, I think perspective, number one, like I enjoy seeing moments where they're going through something I can relate to it, that very few people can. Only the manager is going to have to deal with this problem, and only head coach is going to have to deal with this problem. So I enjoyed seeing David post game have to deal with a couple things that were pulling him off the side. And I said, yeah, he's apologizing to me. And I'm like, do not, I get it. I don't apologize, but it's good to see someone else deals with this stuff. But at the same time, just how some of those top players work pregame, kind of what their mindset is. And it doesn't matter what sport you're in, you can still appreciate that and the level of detail that goes into it and why they're successful. One thing that fascinated me, I didn't realize there's a bullpen right behind, batting cage right behind the dugout. And so whether those guys go in there during the game and are hitting ball, I have no idea, but I know post game they were, which is fascinating. That was something I ever really considered. At midnight, guys are in there taking a couple extra swings, maybe getting ready for the next day or fixing something from that night's game. And So it was a lot of fun to get a chance to see.
I remember one of the times you went to watch batting practice or hanging out pregame, you were talking about how many players came up to you and wanted to talk football, how much they love football. How much of that football passion do you feel when you're in an environment like an MLB game?
Yeah, you forget that football's the greatest sport there is, and how, these baseball players, they care about the Bengals. They care about football. And, but that is maybe where I'm in fan mode. I'm surprised they want to come talk to me. That part doesn't quite click in my brain. I'm there as a fan looking to go see Elly De La Cruz, and here he is telling me he can play quarterback, and seeing all these. So it's that part catches me off guard a little bit, because I'm there as the fan, not expecting them to want to come, talk to me about anything. And so that part, it's pretty cool to be able to see that from those guys.
Are there any athletic similarities you see between, you say, Elly and a receiver, or, different types of players who maybe could translate into football? Do you see any of those, and do you ever identify that when you watch a baseball game?
Yeah. Man, I think we were watching a Reds game the other night where and I can't remember who was pitching, but the ball got hit right over his head and he was trying to track it. And it was right shoulder over the left shoulder, and it fell incomplete, for lack of a better word. And I honestly can't remember if it was Reds or who we were playing or another game I was watching, but I remember thinking, my son Brooks, he's actually the one that said that's like a receiver trying to track a ball, and it looks easy, and it is not, because he thought it was coming over this shoulder at the last second. He's got to adjust to a blind ball. So there are things that show up. I watched Elly's cycle, the night he had the cycle and he hit the triple, and it's such a great call and great play, and the atmosphere is incredible. And when people want to talk Reds baseball, my friends in Oklahoma, I usually send them that clip and like, hey, here's what it's capable of. And so seeing Elly just round the bases there to get that triple, and that's pure athleticism there. And so there's a lot of things that I think show up on both fields.
What do you just think of Elly?
Rare, and I don't know him. I don't know what makes him tick. That part of it, I don't know. But I just know from raw talent and a guy who seemingly is improving over the course of this season. And I know he was in the All-Star game the other day. That's really fun to watch, and seems like a fun personality. Appears to me to be a guy that they like being around, and is about the right stuff. And again, I'm always careful to say that, because you don't always know what's in the locker room, but to a fan, that it seems it's that way. And when you see a guy improving like he is, then usually 1 + 1 = 2 in that situation. So that's cool to see.
Here's one thing we do know about the Reds clubhouse, and Chaz, I wanted to ask you. So people know that Charlie's in on both sports, Zach. And so, Charlie, what would you say? I'm thinking of a few guys. Enlighten Zach on the kinds of questions and who the players are that approach you and have football questions for you.
Do you know Brent Suter, Reds reliever, good friend of Sam Hubbard, constant. Yep. He's in. Yep. He's invested. McClain and Suter really excited about seeing like Dan Pitcher continue to grow in his role. Like that's how in Suter is. I'll tell you what, like not as much of a Bengals guy, but I get a ton of questions from Emilio Pagan, a diehard Panthers fan. Who is so interested in the process of, they've got Bryce Young, so interested in the process of young quarterbacks, that young quarterback head coach dynamic growing and evolving. He's great. He's really invested. McClain, I got a lot of questions from him about like the strategy from a personnel standpoint. He's interested in that. Jose Trevino is really interested in the locker room dynamics, who are the young leaders emerging, what are the different dynamics. But it really is a lot. You feel that whenever you're there, and I feel that constantly. And then one more, like Trevino, he's got the Bengals catcher's mask theme, the Bengals themed catcher's mask that he wears as an honor for you guys.
Yeah. What surprises me is that Tyler Stevenson never played football, never played tight end.
Great one.
And that shocked me to hear that, because I barked at him a little bit before when I was sitting back there behind home plate one time. He was on deck, and I was trying to recruit him to come play for us. And I think he was caught off guard by that a little bit. And then we followed up on that a couple games later, and he revealed I don't think he played football ever, or if he did, he quit at a young age, but he looks like he's got the size for it.
I didn't want to bring up anything Bengals here, but I think there's a contractual obligation that you have to talk about Joe Burrow anytime you're in front of a microphone for more than a certain amount of minutes. Did you have any thoughts on Joe Burrow's attempt to throw a baseball? I don't know if you caught it or if you've seen this
I've seen him
video.
throw baseball. He threw out the first pitch, 2022 opening day. And so I watched him warm up. I watched him warm up in the bullpen, behind the scenes where nobody could see it. And then I saw him throw the first pitch to yours truly. It was a great catch. And so I don't know. That's not really an accurate representation of how he throws a baseball because I've seen him do it in the same setting at a high level.
Are you saying you had to pick one out of the dirt? Was it high? How did it?
No, I'm kidding. I was giving myself credit for catching the ball that was right there.
Well, the
which
thing
was very nerve-wracking, by the way.
I thought it looked like Joe was trying to work on his curve or something. It looked like he was trying to work on a pitch. And
I would
was
say
like,
the
there's
same
just
thing.
no
It
way.
was almost
It
like he was
looks
trying to do something. But again, I don't know the context. I don't know why he was there. I don't know why he was doing that. I saw a 4-second clip, I think, of it happening, and so I don't really have any comment beyond that. But I know that he's throwing balls better than that.
That's so good.
I would hope so.
I want to change gears if you don't mind a little bit, because you are a sports dad and you develop players who are grown men, and you grew, you came up with a dad who was in the coaching. I mean, this is sports and the development of players and youth sports and all that has been your life. Essentially, it's been such a big part of it. I'm curious what you think about this kind of, I don't know about the state of youth sports necessarily, but like, what is the biggest key to developing an athlete today? Somebody that can become a baseball player or a football player or anything. Like, what do you see when you're out there now with your kids that you think is maybe a mistake that people make in development process, or something that people need to be doing right, that they do right in certain aspects?
Well, I think number one, you can tell the kids who are spending time on their own, in their own driveway, with their dad in the backyard, because they want to be doing it, not because dad's telling them, hey, you're going to go do this. I can see that crystal clearly, which parents are saying you're going to go do this private training 4 days a week, and all that. You can tell those kids that maybe don't want to do that, but they're being told to do it. You can tell the kids that just naturally they're out there on their own practicing away from the team, and they're spending time. And so then the athleticism has time to catch up, because the fundamentals and the skills are there at a higher level, because they're putting in the work in the driveway, shooting baskets by themselves for 45 minutes, or throwing a tennis ball off the roof and tracking it by themselves. I used to tape a rake to my mailbox and throw a football at it over and over again, because some days I didn't have anybody to play catch with, or I'd lower my basketball goal to 6 feet and go in the neighbor's driveway and try to drop it in and work on my touch, when I didn't have anybody to play catch with. So you can tell kids that kind of are that mindset. And so they're ahead from a fundamental and technique way. And then their bodies can catch up later, in 8th, 9th, 10th grade, when maybe they're not athletic as some other kids that are naturally bigger at an earlier age or faster at an earlier age. It all evens out. And so my biggest advice for kids is you got to put in the work behind the scenes when it's not the allotted practice time with your coaches. And then from a coaching, you're coaching every kid different. I do not envy like our youth football coaches that have to coach 40, 50 kids, because it can be hard to individualize the training. But we all see that those who have kids, every kid is so different at especially 4th through 8th grade, and how they learn, how they handle coaching, what their confidence level is. And so I know I talk to all my kids very differently when I'm presented maybe with the same situation amongst all 4 of them.
Is there a problem with the siloing of sports, you think?
Oh yeah, I do not like that. I think, I just think about our best players all played so many different sports here, and it's so critical for their overall athleticism, for their competitiveness, to not just isolate themselves in one sport. And certainly there's circumstances sometimes that dictate a guy's just going to play one sport. Maybe he's not good enough at other sports in high school to play other sports. He doesn't make the team. So that's all different scenarios. But what I don't like is when, coaches are steering a guy that, you're going to get punished because you want to play baseball or basketball, and you should be full-time football, or vice versa. I don't see the merits in that. Let these guys play as many sports as they can. And my son's AAU basketball coach is outstanding in that whatever, they play year round AAU, but whatever sport is in season, you're expected to be at that sport, and you're going to miss one of our practices. But when it's our season, we're the primary sport, and other things work around it. So I appreciate that. We've been very fortunate with a lot of the youth coaches we got that have that understanding and have allowed my sons to be able to do that stuff.
You mentioned a lot of the best players in the Bengals playing different sports. Like the obvious ones that came to mind for me was like Yoshibas and his pole vaulting, heptathlon, Dylan Fairchild's a new one. Are there obvious ones to you that stand out with skills you see translate how you can maybe get the most out of a guy because of something he developed? There you go.
Yeah. I mean, he's a basketball, but you can just see that the basketball skills is in the pocket, and his short area quickness and the things that show up on a basketball court over and over. T. Higgins, that shows up all the time. Anytime you throw him a fade ball, a 50-50 jump ball, he goes up and gets it. There's all those basketball skills that show up. So I'm sure I'm missing out on some, but Mike Gesicki, volleyball, basketball, that stuff shows up. And, it's just, I think it's a shame if guys are being forced down a path where they can only play one. High schools may be different. If you're going to a big high school, I can see how that can happen. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can see maybe why that happens. Middle school, elementary school, to me, unacceptable. Like there's no way a kid should ever feel bad because he wants to play a different sport and he's going to miss some time doing something else.
Let's go back to you in baseball. You said you played through 5th grade. Paint a picture for us of Little League Zac Taylor. What position did you play? Who were your coaches? What kind of ball player were you? What do you remember from those days at the Little League fields, those teams, teammates? What was all that like?
It was great. I lived like in the Sandlot. Okay. So picture that neighborhood. Nice. That was growing Norman, Oklahoma, lived on a cul-de-sac, Cynthia Circle. I think there was maybe, we'll call it 12 houses and 30 kids. And so we played backyard baseball like they do in the Sandlot. We had a very similar field. Our home run fence was Gary Gibbs' fence. Gary was the head coach of Oklahoma in the late 80s, early 90s. His daughter Jordan was one of my best friends growing up. So my memories are hitting home runs. We had the great home run. What was the year Bonds and McGuire went after it? So
98.
Whatever.
98.
98. So I was in 8th grade. So we had the great home run derby of 98 where we tracked our home runs all summer. It's between me, Matt Toyas, Dustin LaPole, Brett Batt. We were all in the home run chase. Blake Thompson was involved in that, I think. And the issue, though, was hitting those balls over that fence. Jeannie Gibbs would come out. She didn't like us climbing her fence. So we would have to move back home. She was always asking us to move back home plate. But it was pre-steroid era for us. But we were still getting stronger in 8th grade. So even if we backed home plate up 5-10 feet, we were still able to hit the ball over the fence as the summer progressed. So that was kind of my early baseball memory as a player. Again, I'm talking 8th grade. I wasn't playing real baseball. I was playing backyard baseball. But in 5th grade, I quit because I was a pitcher. I was accurate, but I had no speed and no other pitches, and so I gave up. I gave up a lot of home runs, and my confidence began to drop a little bit as a baseball player. So I think I exited that and just focused on basketball and football. And my dad made me run track in middle school, which we don't need to get into in this podcast.
So as a pitcher, did you?
He was a strike thrower.
As a quarterback as well. Like, did you gravitate towards like your favorite like big league players were pitchers? Or obviously you mentioned Bonds and McGuire and so those guys, but like.
I'm from Norman, Oklahoma. We didn't have pro sports teams, until the Thunder came when I was well beyond college. That wasn't really, it was all college based for us. So I can tell you about, I think Oklahoma won it in 95. I was in 5th grade. They beat Georgia Tech. I'm going to say the score was like 13-5 in the national championship game. So I remember Ryan Miner, Damon Miner. I remember some of those guys that were on that college baseball team at Oklahoma. I can tell you Nolan Ryan, all those greats back then, but to say that I watched a team and had a favorite player at MLB, I did not. And same goes really for the NFL. Same goes really for the NBA. I can tell you all the Oklahoma great players in all the different sports. Lanisha Caulfield, if you want to talk Oklahoma women's basketball in the late 90s. Stacey Gales, who's on TV sometimes. Those are the pro athletes that I remember from that time growing up.
Well, Power Stacks has a huge research staff, and so we'll fact check the 95 College World Series for you.
Brian Miner and Damon Miner, I can tell you, they were brothers. Ryan Miner actually replaced Cal Ripken at third base in the game that he finally missed.
Right. That's good. That's good stuff. Let's, we all love sports, period. We all love football. I mean, football is football, but people romanticize baseball. And I'm curious, when you were a kid and you're taking those swings in your backyard, how did you feel about the game? I have a question. Does Field of Dreams make you cry? Are you into the game that way? Did you cry in the movie?
No, because I can't guarantee that I've seen the movie all the way through. I've definitely seen pieces of it. Because what year did that movie come out?
Oh, it was 89 or something, but you got to catch
great,
up.
Because a running gag in this podcast is that I also haven't seen the movies and shows that Paul and Brian have
like
seen,
any of them.
And I get made fun of.
Seen any of the Rockies? And now you've never seen Field of Dreams. This is it just changes your view of a person.
I mean, I can think of scenes of Field of Dreams. So I just don't know that I definitely didn't go to a movie theater because I was 6 years old, but I probably sat down and it's been on TV and this is supposedly a great movie. I've seen scenes of it.
If I say, Dad, want to have a catch, I didn't do anything for you.
Well, no, not like emotionally. But now that you say that, this is an issue I've had with Pat Devlin, who's from Pennsylvania. He always said, "Do you want to have a catch?" Like warming up at the football. And I said, you got to say that again, man. But do you want to play catch? Do you want to throw? Not, do you want to have a catch? But maybe he's just quoting Field of Dreams now that you said that out loud.
Right. Yeah. This is a good debate that a lot of people have. But Charlie, I'm sorry. If Charlie is looking for someone else in his corner, Zac Taylor has not mentioned anything about Phineas and Ferb or Drake and Josh. And so you're still on that.
I've made
island.
Those references.
You're still
that's my generation.
All by yourself, Chaz.
I sat next to Josh on a plane. I had no idea who it was. And these girls that were getting on the plane were losing their minds. And I had to ask him, I had to be that old man. I felt like, who are you? And I texted my younger sister and she went out of her mind as well. But I sat next to Josh. So that's my Drake and Josh story.
That's a win.
Do you have a favorite game you've ever attended as a fan? You've played in so many. You have produced the favorite game in many Bengals fans' lives. But do you have a favorite game that you've ever attended as a fan? Maybe you were a kid and it sparked something in you.
Okay. That's a good question. As Oklahoma, 2000 being Nebraska, number 1 versus number 2, college game day was there. So that was my junior year of high school. Oklahoma won the national championship that year, 13-2 over Florida State in the national championship game. Oklahoma won. So I said we, because that was we back then. I was Oklahoma, 31-14. And then I transitioned to Nebraska later, and that became we for me. So I would say that was far and away the best game I ever attended in my life. Was that it was probably in October of 2000, Oklahoma versus Nebraska in Norman.
You had to have been a controversial recruiting story back in the day to flip Wheeze to go over to Nebraska.
No, because I committed to Oklahoma State out of Norman my senior year. And then I went on a recruiting trip and my host was Josh Fields, who ended up playing for the Chicago White Sox. Yeah. He was a true freshman starting quarterback and he came in and beat Oklahoma the next year after the national championship. And so he was my host in December, and I'm going around campus with this true freshman from Stillwater. He's the talk of the town. He's a year ahead of me. And I'm like, this is a bad decision on my end, that this guy who's already this legend here in town, I'm going to be a year behind him. I'm never going to play. So I ended up, going to Wake Forest, going to junior college. And so then in junior college, it wasn't like I had Oklahoma. They had won a national championship. They were recruiting nationally. I only had 2 or 3 offers. And so no one ever looked at it like, how could you do that? They knew that my options were limited. And Oklahoma was signing the Rhett Bomars of the world and all these 5-star recruits.
All right, since we've kind of broken down some barriers here and crossing over from football to baseball, since you stare at Charlie and Paul at the stadium all the time and they're lobbing those, back-breaking questions at you, anything you want to ask those guys today on this show?
Wow.
Just something you want to fire back and ask Charlie or Paul a question about anything?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how the most awkward moment with a Reds player. Let's go that direction. Most awkward moment with a Reds player, whether that was in an interview or elsewhere.
That's a good one.
Maybe you don't want to share it on here.
No.
Maybe you don't want to.
No,
but I got to ask the hard questions, guys.
Charlie's an open book.
I would say like my biggest fear is I get something wrong, and because just like with you, with anybody, you get it wrong. So like, for example, it was 7:00 in the morning. It was early in spring training, and I asked Taylor Rogers, one of the Reds' new relievers, I said, what was it like signing with the Reds? And he got traded to the Reds, and I knew that. But stuff like that gets awkward. They're like, here's a great example. Alexis Diaz, former Red, he was just a prospect, and he was talking about how much his brother had been a part of his life. And I didn't know much about Alexis Diaz. His brother was Edwin Diaz, the best closer in baseball. And when Alexis was in AA, I didn't know that. So that's what I spend every day, making sure I don't do stuff like that. So whenever that happens, that's my version of taking the ball out of Burrow's hands.
But you have to make those mistakes at some point in your career to where you never make them for the next 30 again. So go ahead, Paul. What do you got?
I technically have one. So when I was an intern, when I was in college at the local Channel 5, Junior was pretty new to town in the Reds clubhouse, but he notably didn't really talk after most games. That wasn't really his thing, and he was a little, I'm not going to say contentious with the media, but people knew his stance on certain things. Well, as an intern, one of the few times they would ship you down to the actual clubhouse, I go down there with the TV producer, and they're like, you should go ask Junior if he'll talk. Will you go? Like they basically, it was almost like a prank to make me be the one to have. So my 20-year-old self goes over, and I tried, I went to Moeller, he went to Moeller. This is a natural in, right? I don't see any problem here. I'm got my big speech, and I'm like, hey, I went to Moeller, blah, 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 whatever. And I'm like, would you have a second to talk? And he looks at me, and he looks at all the TV cameras awaiting his answer. And he's like, you guys know the deal. And he almost you sent this intern over to make me do this, and I'm going to do it to him. And he did. He shut me down and he walked off.
Well, at least it's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. No doubt. I can say
it's funny. My version of that, the most big league I've ever been. And I've heard he's a nice guy. He's obviously a very hard worker, but it's a relevant story. I was going to ask Paul Skeens about Joe Burrow. And I go, hey, Paul, you have a say it doesn't break stride. He goes, no. And he keeps, and that's the origin of big leaguing someone. But it is funny that there is a Reds Bengals parallel there.
Yeah. Well, I've got one Tito Francona story that you guys maybe knew well before I did. So during the season, my family usually starts watching some TV series, and they watch it every night. My wife and 2 sons, and my daughters are asleep. And so I'm always missing out on this because I'm here at work. But last year they were watching Lost, and a show I watched in college. And so they're watching Lost through all the seasons and get up to speed. And we're going to Dallas for the Monday night game. And so they're flying separately, on a flight, my wife and 2 sons. And my son texts me, hey, the guy next to me is watching Lost, same episode I'm watching. And I said, oh, you should chat it up. He said, oh, he's an older guy and he's watching Lost too. And I said, you should conversate about it. Weeks later, I'm doing my Friday, news conference with you guys, off the record and all that stuff. And someone tells me in there, who Brooks sat next to on the way to the Dallas game was Terry Francona. And neither one of them knew who the other person was, but my son I have not met Tito yet. I haven't had a chance to get over there yet, but my son and Tito sat next to each other on the plane and watched Lost together. I don't know if any words were even exchanged, but we now know that he's a big Lost fan as well as the kids in my family. So,
and what's incredible is that the 2004 Red Sox winning the World Series is a key plot point in the show Lost.
That's true.
Wow.
That's true. Okay, there you go.
That's good.
Nugget.
Maybe that's why he likes the show so much.
Yeah,
Or maybe nothing else was on and he just watched a random episode and
Sure.
had no clue. So you never know.
Hey, Zach, before you get bunkered down at Paul Brown Stadium, we got to fix that. You got to get back to the ballpark.
Paycor Stadium.
Paycor Stadium. It's been a while. Before you get bunkered down there, we got to get you back to the ballpark. You got to meet Tito. You got to share that story. If you get tired of the Bengals sweep, there's a seat between Charlie and myself in the press box.
Yeah.
I think we could squeeze you in.
Yeah.
So we'll do that. But we know this is kind of the countdown for you. So thanks for being the first guest on Power Stacks.
Well, I appreciate that. It's an honor. Thank you guys for having on. You guys made it easy, made it fun, and it's always, I enjoy talking about the Reds. I enjoy it's a great way to spend my summer. I watch all the games. I sit on my back porch, and the ones I don't attend, I get a chance to watch them all. So it's been fun for me.
All right, let's step back real quick for the Reds' milestone moment of the week, and that's an easy one. It's Elly De La Cruz and Andrew Abbott at the All-Star Game. Back-to-back All-Star Games for Elly De La Cruz. First time there, probably not the last time at the All-Star Game for Andrew Abbott. They both performed admirably, and that is our Reds' milestone moment of the week. And this week's milestone moment is brought to you by Glenville Ave, the baby blanket designed by parents who wanted something better. Chaz, you're just back from a wedding. I assume you were talking to a lot of friends who might be in the market for something like this, a baby blanket that's safe, that grows with you, that celebrates milestones as you go along. Hopefully you passed on the word about Glenville Ave.
it's funny because I don't know what to get people when they have kids, but now I do. So
Sure.
This has been a real lifesaver.
That's right. Why do you want these blankets from Glenville Ave? You got to have them because they're not just softer, they're safer. They're hypoallergenic, dyed with skin-safe colors.
Do they grow with the kid?
They grow with the kid. They already start out, they're larger to begin with, but then you can grow with those milestone moments that you celebrate along the way with your child. Check out the website to get a good feel for this. It's GlenvilleAveLLC.com. GlenvilleAveLLC.com. If you use the promo code STACKS, you're going to get 10% off that first order. So for your child, for your grandchild, for a friend who has a child, celebrate those milestones with Glenville Ave and tell them you heard about it on Power Stacks. And Chaz, this is a good moment to also say, if you're interested, if you're out there, you have a business or you know someone that has a business interested in partnering with Power Stacks and becoming part of the Power Stacks community, you can contact us at the email. It's powerstackspod@gmail.com. Powerstackspod@gmail.com. We can customize something for you and your business the same way we do for the good folks at Glenville Ave, and we'd love to hear from you on that. All right, back for a little post-game now on Zac Taylor. And I thought it was outstanding. What I loved most about it was kind of taking him in a different direction, a different side of Zac Taylor than is presented publicly in Cincinnati. Chaz, you're around him all the time. Getting him in a different setting with a different type of feel and topics. What'd you think of Zac Taylor, our first ever guest on Power Stacks?
You know what I loved, and this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek trying to make a joke here, but seeing Luis May as an F tight end, Paul, a conversation we've had a lot, is Yoshibasha's blocking ability and using that power slot role in a different way this season. Jokingly, that's good to know that's something that's on Zach's mind. But no, Zach's a natural storyteller, and it's always fun to get to see.
Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I like this. I always enjoy. I'm really kind of fascinated by these. You know, when you hear the stories of a young Zac Taylor playing home run derby and all of that. So, I mean, you know, the moving the plate back and everything else. It's like, you know, it's like you come up in this type of an environment and it's just, that's what you just love it. You whether it's baseball, whether it's football, and, you know, he's got the rake attached and he's throwing or he's dropping in the stuff. That stuff is what makes the people that are great at it, whether it be from a leadership or a college football or development or the Joe Burrows of the world, great. And I thought that was a great point that he made about the development of kids. This is like, it's got to be the ones that want to be doing it on their own. It's not going to be because you shove somebody into some private athletic tutor or whatever, any of these training facilities. It's going to be the one that wants to be with the rake in the backyard, man. It's like I would make a Rocky Drago reference here, okay, but I know that it won't hit with you, Charlie.
Go ahead.
But I mean, it's Rocky in the snow versus Drago and all the machines. It's the love of it that is so much the difference in really a lot of the ones that develop and the ones that maybe don't necessarily. You can't force it on them.
Yeah. Two things stood out to me. One, you see people who lead and coach and manage at that level, and you assume that they all kind of have a feel for that position. But hearing him talk about sitting in meetings with David Bell and just kind of being taken back with the types of preparation and the planning and the things that they talk about, he's like all of us. He's like a fan who sees baseball and doesn't see everything that goes on behind, even though he knows, that he has that parallel position in football. And so hearing him talk about kind of going behind the scenes with baseball was good. And then I just think about how few people ask Zac Taylor something not related to football or the Bengals. And so just to see someone in his position that we see publicly, front-facing all the time, the same thing. Bengals, football, Bengals, draft, Bengals, offseason. Just to give him a chance to ask some of those questions that we all did and hear him talk about his childhood and his family and things growing up and things that weren't football. I hope he had as much fun with that as we did, because I think that was unique.
And I mean, we didn't put him on the spot and ask for, Durant's trade deadline strategy, but he's invested. Like he was saying, he's watching the games. He cares. He has a lot of thoughts on the Reds. And of course, that wasn't the case before he became the Bengals head coach. But when you move to a city, obviously we've all seen Zach's gotten invested in the city of Cincinnati, and the Reds have been kind of another cool way for him to do that.
We all know he would just recite what he heard when he watched Trade-A-Palooza. Right. I mean, we know when he watched Trade Deadline of Palooza, the moment it came out, he was going to just be reciting back all of the takes that you guys had. He's going to be talking about safe as death. All of it's going to be.
What I'm hearing is just jealousy that the Growler can't do trade deadline of Palooza because the Bengals don't make trades.
It's true. It's kind of a silly episode. Although last year, think about how many minutes we could have spent on Khalil Herbert acquisition.
I'll have takes on that in November.
Shots fired. Shots fired. So in summary, I think we kind of blew past the fact that he saw Elly De La Cruz as a quarterback. There was that. We have the Luis May story, but also there was real interest in Tyler Stevenson. There was real interest in Steve-O
QB1
as a football player. He is QB1, so there is that. But we can't thank Zac Taylor enough for making that happen. Listen, just giving us that kind of time and making that happen. Paul, can't thank you enough for helping arrange all this and coming on just to talk our way through this. And I'd like to do some more things like that. I thought that was good. So let's put our thinking caps on and get back to work on that. Yes.
Do it.
All right.
Yeah. Brainstorm up some more. Send in who you think. You guys have somebody you're listening, you're watching, and you're like, who I want to see as the fourth in that box? Send us your ideas of who you think would be a good one, and we'll see if we can't make it happen, produce another one.
PowerStacksPod@gmail. PowerStacksPod@gmail. Send us a suggestion. We'll work on it. For now, thanks to Zac Taylor. Thanks to the godfather of the Growler podcast empire, Paul Dehner Jr. Chaz, I'll see you at the ballpark. Thanks for checking out Power Stacks. We'll see you next time.